Hello,
There,
everyone.
Dr.
I,
Liotta, welcome. Let me
I
go
am
ahead.
really sorry. I am
No,
really sorry.
oh, no problem. Let me go ahead and introduce you and we'll reconvene and then you can get started.
Okay, great.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to the Road Conference. My name is Emmy Lopez-Phillips and I will be your facilitator. I want to introduce our next session, which is Military Medicine, Opportunities and Adventures. And we have with us Captain Robert Liotta, MD. He's a diagnostic radiologist who currently practices medicine at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. He also serves as the Associate Dean of Recruitment and Admissions for the Uniformed Services University School of Medicine in Bethesda, Maryland. Dr. Liotta obtained a BS in chemistry from the United States Naval Academy in 1997 and his medical degree from the Uniformed Services University in 2001. Prior to becoming a radiologist, Dr. Liotta served as a naval flight surgeon with assignments in Japan, Korea, Guam, and Iraq. And Dr. Liotta, we're so grateful that you're here, and we just want to say thank you for your service up front. And without further ado, I'll let you go ahead and share your screen. Let me stop sharing mine, and you can get started.
Well, great. Thank you so much and for introducing me. And I really do apologize. I had to run all the way over from the hospital, and I do apologize because I thought I had this on for 7 o'clock. So, I'm going to share my screen right here. And actually, I just came from looking at a very interesting case. And so actually we were normally late on a Friday here on the East Coast, so it's almost 7 o'clock, but there was an ad on cardiac MRI that I just got done reading, which was it's a rare abnormality in one of our patients, and so I was also talking to the cardiologist about it, and I was like, oh my goodness, I got to get out of here. So, but it's actually, we're going to talk about it in case conference with my residents on Monday. It's that interesting with it. Are you guys seeing my slides here? Let's see here. Let me just put this here.
Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'm really excited to get to present here. And to tell you the truth, I've been in the Navy for 19 years now, and I love it. It's been such a phenomenal career. I've gotten to see the world, do all kinds of things. And when I look back on it, I really I feel blessed because I really have gotten to do a lot of different things. And throughout this whole part, and even now looking back at that career, getting to be a physician, which is a phenomenal honor and just a grace to be able to take care of people when they're the sickest, but then at the same time, be able to use that skill and take care of our wounded warriors, our airmen, sailors, soldiers, Marines, when they're hurt, and to be there for them. And what I can tell you is that it is great, especially being at a hospital like Walter Reed, where you walk down the hallways and you know that the patients you're taking care of, many of them have really given the greatest sacrifice of themselves or put themselves in harm's way for really our nation and everything that we stand for in this country. I have a picture here. These are the people who your majority are going to take care of. This is our mission as a military physician. It is my mission to really take care of our active duty personnel and our pilots and really our soldiers, our infantrymen, our submariners, our ship drivers, all of them, they are our prime mission. And at the same time, though, we take care of them their whole life. And what happens, and I just show some of the wounded warriors that I have here. But these warriors or these service members, at the same time in medicine, we got to take care of their whole family. And so when people come on to active duty, you may think, oh, okay, well, military medicine is only going to deal with 20 and 30-year-olds. Well, that's not true. We actually take care of all the way from pediatrics and neonatology all the way up to geriatrics, because we take care of all of the families of these service members, as well as these service members when they go on to leave the service and when they retire. And so it is the full spectrum of care that we give here in the military. When you think about medicine, and a career in medicine is really a joy, no matter whether or not you practice in the civilian sector or if you practice in the military medicine. But what I can tell you is that you will definitely have adventures in the military. And I have a few pictures here, but I think our military gets called into action and our military physicians get called into action whenever something's going wrong. And whether or not that is a humanitarian relief mission, whether or not there's been a natural disaster, or whether or not there's a pandemic, just like this with COVID-19 now, a world pandemic, which we've never seen in our lifetimes, any of us here, but that we're called up to action. And what I can say is many of the physicians at our hospital here at Walter Reed got called up to go on to our hospital ship. This is the Mercy, which is on the West Coast where you guys are at. And then on the East Coast, we have the Comfort. And so many of our providers got called up out of the hospital to go when the Comfort rolled into New York. And, in this past spring and early summer, when we got called up to help and to support the nation. At the same time, those experiences are pretty neat. Not only we dealt with COVID-19, but that ship, the Comfort and the Mercy, go out and they do humanitarian assistance every other year when they go out. And so if you're on the West Coast, there's chances to go out into the Pacific Islands and out into areas like Vietnam and Cambodia and Thailand. And then on the East Coast, the Comfort goes down to South America. And so opportunities to go to Honduras and Peru and Bolivia and Panama and all of the countries that way. And really what happens is they go in and they'll stay in each of those countries for about a month, for 4 weeks. And here, even at the Uniformed Services University, our medical students get to go on those missions. They'll actually do like an elective rotation as fourth years and get to go down there for 4 weeks. And we'll fly them out to the ship. And then they'll participate in those activities. Really, those opportunities for taking care of some diseases that we don't even see ever in the United States, and tropical medicine diseases, parasites, and also some levels of disease that we really never see in the States because we never let those diseases go so far. But a lot of times we will see that in these third world nations where they don't have the same medical care that we have here in the United States. I also put a few pictures here. These are actually when we had the Ebola outbreak in Sierra Leone several years ago. And really for me, that was interesting because I was the chief of the Department of Radiology here at Walter Reed. And we had to get ready to take Ebola cases. And because our military was out there with the command and control, and also our public health service was out there on the front lines fighting that battle. And what we were is we were right across the street from the NIH, who actually had Ebola patients. And we really had to work very closely with them to model what we would do on our Ebola ward. And I found myself reading and studying and thinking, all right, how are we going to do a CT scan on an Ebola patient? Or how do we get them through our hospital? And really working out all of those activities and training up our staff to be able to do that. And I can say we were well trained and ready to do it. We did not get a patient, and thank goodness, because they were able to contain the infection. But we were basically schooled and brought up to speed right with our counterparts at the National Institutes of Health. And many of my colleagues and actually prior military who had then retired afterwards were working there. So we had really close connections while we were doing that. I have a picture here of just an astronaut, and actually we have two of our graduates from the Uniformed Services University are astronauts, and Colonel Drew Morgan just came back from the International Space Station this summer, and actually had the longest stint in space at the space station. He was actually just a phenomenal individual. And now, not everyone gets to do these things, but what I can say is it's highly selective to become an astronaut. But what I can say is their experience, and the fact that we have two of them, really stood out with their prior military experience and the things that they've done. Colonel Drew Morgan's an ER doctor and had served in Iraq, and he's still on active duty. And really those selective programs you're allowed to apply for when you're in the military. And if you get selected for them, the military will let you serve your time with those prestigious, organizations and that work, which is really phenomenal. And we really benefited from getting to actually, we spoke with Colonel Morgan several times from space here at the university, even this past year when he was up there. But really neat opportunities that you have. I was never a part of NASA, but when I was a flight surgeon, I actually got trained up because we were still flying shuttle missions then, and we actually got to go though to, we actually got to go down to NASA and get trained on how would we actually deal with any injuries if in the first 6 minutes of a flight when they're launching, if they actually were able to abort and there were survivors, they had to train us on the occupational hazards, the fuel spills and different things. And we were positioned all over the country as military assets that could actually help with that if that ever happened. And so that was actually fun training and really just a side note experience that I got to do in my career, and just purely simply because I was in the government and in the military where these opportunities lend themselves to do that. When you think about our health system, we actually have a really big military health system, and when you look at it, we have 55 hospitals, and they're all over the United States and also overseas with it. And when you think about practicing, people often ask me, they're like, oh, but I'm gonna have to do this in the military, and that's different or that's scary. And what I can tell you is the vast majority of my career has been in the hospital because that's what I am as a physician. And there's only about of my 19 years of service, the amount of time I spent in austere environments was really only over about 2 to 3 years, if you look at all that time I spent. And so what that means is that you are going to be operating in the hospital when you come on board, either with a health profession scholarship program or if you graduate from our school, and you will be working like any other doctor in your skill set and in your specialty. But what will happen is you will occasionally, and I think if you have a 4-year payback, you can maybe bet on it, and it may not happen, but you may get deployed one time in that 4 years of payback. And I always say plan on 2 tours if you actually come to the Uniformed Services University where you have a 7-year payback. And you may not do any tours in those 7 years, but just depending on what happens or what the needs are for your specialty, I always say just plan on 2. And what does that deployment look like? Well, those deployments, or when they use you, they could be short. For example, getting deployed to New York City for 2 or 3 months because of the pandemic, or that could be up to anywhere from 6 to 12 months, and typically they're about 7 to 8 months, is where you would get pulled up to be either in an in-theater hospital or with a unit that's deploying. And so right now, our areas, which we actually are pulling out of Afghanistan, and in fact, one of our radiologists at the hospital was scheduled to go there, but we actually are closing down that hospital. And so, but it just depends where the military is at that time. And so, but those experiences, even when you're out there, for example, when I deployed to Iraq, and I'm just going to fast forward here a little bit, you will be working, and I'm going to show a picture here. This was our tent hospital, and we were really what called back then was the Sunni Triangle, and near Ramadi and Fallujah, and we were about 11 miles from Ramadi and 7 miles from Fallujah. And this tent hospital, we had 3 operating rooms, and this was our ER bay. And what I can tell you is we could do everything in this ER and everything in this tent hospital here that you could do in your trauma setting or in your metropolitan trauma centers. We could do everything just the same. And it was actually pretty phenomenal, and many lives were saved because of the work we could do there. And it was really neat. When we were fully outfitted, at that time I was just a general practitioner, but we had ER doctors, we had orthopedic surgeons, we had cardiothoracic surgeons and general surgeons, where we were just stationed on the base there. And really, it was no different than when I take trauma call, or when I was, I was a surgical intern the year before that, and taking trauma call down at Washington Hospital Center here in the DC area. Working out there was almost no different other than just the way it looked. But the medicine aspect of it was exactly the same with it. And I lost a little bit of time with you guys, but I usually like to talk about some of that training I got and the way that they prepared us to basically take care of mass casualties. And here I am a graduate of the Uniformed Services University, and there's an operation, and we call it Operation Bushmaster, where we actually practice mass casualty drills, and it's actually required to graduate to be able to navigate these scenarios. And we spend about a week and a half in the field or out in the woods practicing these mass casualties. And what I can tell you is that when I had my first mass casualty back in 2004, we had 35 patients coming in. I was really, really nervous. And I remember they were activating all the physicians had to go to the shock trauma platoon. And when we were going in, I remember my heart racing, but when I walked into this tent, this area, and it was actually the back side of this, which right over here, this side of, there was actually a hard structure. When I walked in here, this room was filled with injured, filled with people. It was hopping with people. And it was automatically, even though I was nervous when I had walked in, I actually felt like I had been in an environment like this before because of the training that I had at the Uniformed Services University. And that, that Operation Bushmaster, I had actually really lived through about 50 mass casualties in that week and a half of training. And it was really almost identical. And the only difference was that instead of simulated patients and simulated casualties, we were actually working firsthand. And that whole night, we were actually worked all night. And I have a picture here, HM1 Johnny Garner. He was my right-hand man, really my whole time in Iraq right here with those sunglasses. This is me back then in 2004. And these were really, he was with me that whole night. And I just still remember it. Anything I needed, it was right there. If I said I needed light, I'd have a headlamp put on my head. If I needed sutures, or if I needed, in fact, there was a young little boy. He was 11 years old, just caught in the firefight, caught in the there was a big explosion that was put off, and he was coming in, and he actually had a big piece of shrapnel in his skull, embedded in it, and we had done an X-ray and seen that it hadn't penetrated his skull. But what had happened was we needed to get it out, and I had you have these clamps or Kelly clamps, but I could not get a good grip on it to get it out. And I was like, Garner, I need something else. And, within minutes, he had a Leatherman in my hand, and he's like, Doc, I think this is going to work. And we cleaned it up, and it worked, being able to get the shrapnel out of that little boy's his skull. And I will never forget the smile on that little boy's face when I saw him. It really, it was joy. His parents were there. We had interpreters with us. And I just remember he was so stoic because he wasn't crying at all. He was so tough. But then when we were done and I was done cleaning him up and sewing him up, he had the biggest smile on his face. And I remember thinking in that moment, I thought, gosh, these would be like my neighbors here on the 4th of July celebrating, having a neighborhood picnic or party. And instead we're in this terrible environment. But at the same time, it really humbled me in going, no, this is what it is to be a doctor, to be able to connect on the human level with your patients that way. And I'll never forget his face or his smile with that. And even now, I have 6 kids. And when I look at my kids and I think about them, because they're about roughly, some of them are, my oldest or my second is about his age right now. And I often think when I see Michael, about him as well with that. So I want to backpedal a little bit because I'm a little off kilter with coming in a little late, but I want to just give you guys a little idea. Those are little snapshots of my own career. But I want to just tell you, if this at all excites you, or the adventure of this excites you, and you want to learn more about it, the 2 ways to actually come in, or that most people come into the military, are that you either apply for a health profession scholarship, or you come to the Uniformed Services University. And I have up here on the slide, what are the differences, or what does that entail? And so what I usually do when I talk to students that are applying to our school or inquiring about it, I usually say, you know what, you really need to look at both programs and apply to both if you really are interested in military medicine. And the first program is called HPSP, or the Health Professions Scholarship Program. And this is really a scholarship that you apply for. You apply for it at the same time you're applying to medical school. And if you apply through a recruiter, and you specifically tell the recruiter, I want to apply to go to medical school, and they will start evaluating you. And the way that the scholarship works is, if you get a scholarship and you get into medical school, they will pay your full tuition. You'll have your full tuition paid all throughout medical school. Now, the medical school you choose has to be in the United States or Puerto Rico, but it has to be a U.S. accredited medical school. And but it can be MD or DO. And when you take that scholarship, you also get a signing bonus of about $20,000, and then you will also get a stipend while you're in medical school, which comes to about $23,000 a year. That stipend, throughout the 4 years of medical school. In return for that scholarship and that payment, then you agree to serve for 4 years in the military after you're done training, and that's after you're done either, you'll go to medical school and finish the 4 years of medical school, but then you also need to do residency. And so you won't do that 4 years of payback until you've done your residency and you're fully trained. Now, in some services like the Navy, it's possible that you may not finish your residency. You may start the first year of residency, but then you actually say, hey, I want to be what we call a general practitioner for the military. And you could actually pay back your 4 years as a general practitioner and then go back to residency as a civilian, or actually go back as a military resident and then just continue your career in the military with it. On the other hand, if you come here to the Uniformed Services University, we will actually, it's a free education to come here for the 4 years of medical school. And on top of that, you actually come on to active duty throughout your entire time of medical school. And that has really good benefits. That means that you get paid the full salary of an O1, which is the first level of officers in the military. And here at the Uniformed Services University, that salary is between $64,000 and $70,000 a year. And it's gone up, and it's closer to $70,000 right now. And so you're going to get paid that every year of medical school plus a free education. On top of that, if you're married or you have dependents, then you will, those dependents and your spouse and your loved ones are all covered under our medical health care. So you have full health care while you're here as well. Those are a lot of benefits, and because those benefits are more than what the scholarships gives you, when you graduate, you incur a 7-year commitment. That means 7 years after you're done with or you will serve in the military for 7 years after completing your residency. And it seems like a long time. I know, especially when I was in your shoes, when I thought about that, I was like, oh, it seems like a long time, but I can tell you that goes very, very fast. And if many of you are thinking about your 4 years of college or how fast that goes, 7 years goes pretty quickly as well. And what I can say is, even though it's 7 years, you're going to be doing medicine those 7 years. And so pretty much of what you will be doing is what you would be doing in the civilian sector with that. Another big question I often get, though, is, okay, yes, you guys will pay for my education, but will I get to do what I want to do if I go to the military? Would they force me ever to do a residency I didn't want to do? And the answer is no. No one gets forced to do any residency that they don't want to do. You just have to apply to the residencies. And if you don't get accepted, then it's your choice. You could actually just stay. We will make sure you're credentialed and have a medical license. So we will actually give you 1 year of training, which is called your internship. And then you can be a general practitioner. And then you can keep applying to residencies until you get accepted to the residency of your choice. Or for some individuals, they, if you have the scholarship, you could become a flight surgeon, which is a phenomenal opportunity, especially in the Navy, where they teach you how to fly. We get to go to flight school. I did that for 9 months, and you actually agree to just serve as a general practitioner who takes care of pilots and their maintainers and all of the service members who take care of those pilots and their airplanes and all the maintenance and the whole squadron. You will take care of them, and you actually it's a phenomenal, fun time. And if I do have time at the end, I'll show you a few pictures of my time getting to do that. But in any case, if you're doing that, you are paying back your 4 years or part of your 7 years if you do that. And in my case, I did that for 3 years. And even the year of training I had counted as payback. So I ended up doing 1 year of training and 2 years as a flight surgeon. And that was 3 years of payback out of the 7 that I owed. And what I can tell you, for some individual, and for me especially, it was a nice little sabbatical in between. I worked really hard in medical school. I worked really hard in my internship. Being a flight surgeon, I worked hard, but not nearly as hard as I worked as a resident or as an intern. And it was a nice little break. In between, I was still practicing medicine and being a physician, but then I went back and did radiology after that, and then went back into being a resident. And what I can tell you is that it was really fun. As a radiologist, had I just gone straight through, I would never have had those fun opportunities. And I love being a radiologist, but hands down, my most favorite 3 years of my time in the Navy were when I was a flight surgeon. It was really, really a fun time. Pilots work hard, but also they don't work as hard as we do as physicians, especially when we're in training. And so I really felt like I had a life again, and, you know, working only till 4:30 in the afternoon. And then I spent time learning how to kite surf and running and working out and just doing a lot of fun things during those 3 years, which was a nice little, I call it a little sabbatical or break. And at the same time, I got to do a lot of reading. And when I had actually came back to residency as a radiologist, I was really up on a lot of things because I had spent those 3 years also just on my own time and free time studying radiology. And so I was that much better as a resident when I finally came back for my radiology residency. So when we look at residencies that you can do, we have all residencies in the military, but there are, and to be honest, there are certain residencies where we have more positions for, and those are ones that are wartime critical. And so the wartime critical specialties are orthopedic surgery, general surgery, internal medicine, family medicine, emergency medicine. Those we're going to have a lot more of. Psychiatry is very necessary for wartime medicine. And then there are other specialties like radiology or like you know, pediatric endocrinology, which is a fellowship, but where we may not, we don't need those in a wartime setting, we don't need you to deploy to do those specialties, but we still need those. We need those specialties in our hospitals and to take care of our dependents. And so there will be less opportunities or less positions for some of those, for what we call some of those non-wartime critical specialties, but that doesn't mean we don't have them. And so like physical medicine and rehabilitation in the Navy, those are less of a number because they have a lot of civilian doctors who just do that, but we will always still need some uniformed physicians to do that. And so that is, if there is a drawback, it's just looking at, we have all the specialties, but there will be some specialties that that may be a little harder, or you may not get right away because they are more competitive. Because we, you know, in the Navy, we may only have, you know, 6 positions for that, whereas, you know, for orthopedic surgeon, we may have, you know, 36 or 40 positions because it's a wartime critical specialty. Now, that being said, you may say, oh, there's only 6 positions. Well, but you're really only competing against a very small number of people, in the sense that there are only about 1,200 people who apply for those military residencies each year, because it's just a smaller, so it's not the whole United States. And when you look at those numbers, sometimes I think some of the specialties that are really competitive in the civilian sector are not as competitive here in the military. And to just give you an example of that, I looked at the numbers of how many applicants there are for every residency in the Army. And the most competitive residency in the Army last year was orthopedic surgery, which had 1.8 applicants, so less than 2 applicants per position offered in orthopedics. And so that is much more competitive, or much, you know, that it is much more competitive in the civilian sector to get orthopedics. And that was our most competitive specialty. So even though some specialties will have less positions, there are less people applying for those 6 positions per se. You know, say we have 6 physical medicine and rehabilitation positions, there may be only 10 people applying for those 6 positions, if that makes sense, because it's really a smaller number of people in our system applying for those residencies. So I am going to just take a quick break just to find out. I know I don't want to go over, because I know you guys are on a time schedule and I started late. Is this a nice spot to break for questions, or do I have a little bit more time to talk?
You have about 2 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, I'm going to show a quick, this is actually, I have these 2 minutes to show. So this was, so I graduated from the Uniformed Services University in 2001. I did a surgical internship because at the time I was interested in either doing ear, nose, and throat surgery or interventional radiology. And so I knew if I did a surgical internship, that would leave it open so that I could actually do a surgical residency, or I could go into a residency for radiology. And I knew both of those specialties are very competitive. And so at the same time that year, I applied to become a flight surgeon, and knowing if I didn't get selected for residency to go straight through, that I would actually love to be a flight surgeon. And so this was actually, I finished my internship in 2002, And right after that, the Navy said, all right, we're going to send you to Pensacola. And I lived literally on Pensacola Beach for the next 9 months. And I went through primary flight school with our line officers, or our real pilots. Now, I only did 13 flights, which is primary flight school for our real pilots. Our real pilots actually study flying for 4 years to become, fully qualified jet pilots or helicopter pilots or pilots, and they're amazing and well-trained individuals. I got a little glimpse of what they get to do, and this was actually the T-34, which I got to fly during that time. Also during that time, we also got to do the same pre-flight instruction. And so this is actually me me behind a pickup truck, and they pull us up and then they cut the line and we actually come down, and this is the simulate. We don't get to jump out of an aircraft, but if we had to, we know what it's like to come down in a parachute. And this actually was really a fun day out in Pensacola doing that. This is just a little bit of, we also do water training, and you'll have plenty of time to get up in your water skills, but we have to swim a mile in our flight suits. And this is what all pilots do in the Navy. And it's pretty intense training, but at the same time, really fun as well. And this was actually my buddy, Mike Kearns, who is a critical care anesthesiologist now. And this was him after he had swam that 1 mile swim. He was very happy to be done with it. So I'll pause here now, though, but I could talk on and on about it was a great time. My wife sometimes gets mad at me because I do say that year on the beach, living on the beach and getting to do this training was one of the greatest years of my life until I met my wife, I always tell her. So in that case, so she gives me a hard time if I say it was the best.
That's great. Please remember to use the Q&A feature for your questions, and we already have some questions submitted. So the first one is, what was your hardest challenge? Right.
Now that's a great question. And I would say, to be honest, the hardest challenge for me was it was actually not even related to the military. It was actually studying medicine and actually working. And so I think the hardest years for me were my 3rd year of medical school, when you are a clerk and you're going into the clinical settings, and every 6 weeks you're doing something new, and you're just getting inundated with medicine. And so that was a really hard year for me, because you would go and you do 6 weeks of internal medicine and start feeling comfortable with it, and all of a sudden they throw you into OB/GYN, and it's totally different diseases and different procedures. And so I found my 3rd year of medical school was really hard, and my 1st year of residency, because in radiology, we have 10 disciplines. We have musculoskeletal radiology, we have neuroradiology, pediatric radiology, cardiothoracic radiology, which is my subspecialty. And I felt every 4 weeks we rotated, and it was really hard for me, because you would get good at something for 4 weeks and all of a sudden really just get demoralized and humbled again and going, oh gosh, I don't know how to do this. And so that was a really, really hard time for me. Both of those years where I was like, gosh, do I really want to do this? And what I can tell you is, if you ever feel that the way I did, not everyone experiences that. Many people love everything. I was one of those who really, I think it's my own personality. I like to be in control and feel like I'm good at something. And you just have to be patient with it. And I'm so glad I didn't quit those years, and I stuck with it, because things do get better very quickly, after those initial indoctrinations. So that would be it. I think when it comes to military, what's the hardest thing? I would say probably the hardest things that I dealt with in the military, or the most unique and challenging, was my deployment to Iraq. And that was not that it was just emotionally challenging, and yet at the same time very invigorating, to be able to be on the front lines and being right there helping individuals. And what I can say is, and I think I have a picture here, HM3 Hess. So he was actually, I flew Kazovac with him, and this individual was a true American hero. So Hess, this guy flew every day, and he was picking up casualties on the battlefield every day. Actually, all 3 of these guys were. I flew with Hess the most. And I only flew once a week, and I didn't have to. As a physician, you didn't have to do it, because we were really, as a physician, you're a precious asset. They really don't want to lose you on the battlefield. But someone has to go out there and do that. And these were my corpsmen, And, I was like, you know what, if they're doing it, I need to go out there and see what they're facing every day. And so I wish I kept in touch with Hess. He said he always wanted to be a physician afterwards. I'm sure he is practicing now. And if I ever do run into him, but he was phenomenal and many lives saved out there because of him and the actions he took while he was out there. So, but that was, war is a terrible thing. It's not something I think anyone should ever prescribe to. But when you're faced with it, and what I was nice about it is I was faced with it as a physician where I got to heal. I wasn't in the business of breaking things or hurting people. I was in the business of helping everyone. And we helped not only our own, but we also helped the insurgents and took care of, the foreign nationals that were caught in the crossfires as well.
Well, that's a good segue into our next question. I'm going to combine a couple. So what are some examples of usual places physicians are deployed? And do you recommend this to high school students?
Right. Yes. So it will be, the usual places you may deploy, and we may not even know them in the future where those are. Right now, the places that we deploy are Afghanistan, although we're pulling out of Afghanistan. We do have people on the border with Syria, and we do have people that go to Iraq. You will also see deployments to the Middle East, like Bahrain, and also Djibouti, Africa. So at the Horn of Africa, we have areas. But also, so those are our deployed areas, or what we call hazardous duty areas in the military right now. But also, we do have hard structured medical facilities that we've been at for many years that aren't in combat zones, and those are in Japan, Italy, and Germany. And those are really, you would go there with your family. Like your family would get stationed in Japan, and you get to live in Japan for 3 years, or Italy for 2 or 3 years or 4 years. And those can be really enjoyable experiences. My one good buddy from internship and residency, he always wanted to be fluent in Italian. And so when we graduated, he said his first choice was to go to Naples, Italy. And the Navy said, well, you know what, we don't have a room for there this year, but next year we're going to need a radiologist there. And so they said, you know what, why don't you just stay at Walter Reed for 1 extra year and stay as an attending here, and then the next year we'll send you to Naples. And he loved it so much there. He speaks fluent Italian now. He spent 4 years there, and he didn't want to leave. And so he actually took orders then to go to Sigonella, Sicily for another 4 years. And he met his wife in Italy there. And so they have 2 kids, and now he's actually practicing in Washington, still in the military, but he'll retire next year. But what's neat about it is if you had been a civilian, there's no way you're going to be able to live in Italy and practice and keep your license, at least in the United States, and credentialed. But for the military, you can do that because he was practicing on a U.S. license just in Italy, taking care of U.S. soldiers and sailors and Marines. So that's pretty neat. I would say, obviously, I think you asked it, would I recommend it to a high school student? I have 6 of my kids, and that's the reason I took this job, is because I really do believe this is a good way to start your career in medicine or do a career in medicine. And so if any of my 6 kids are interested in going to medicine, I can honestly say I will tell all of them, any of them that want to go to medical school, I said it's a no-brainer to take the scholarship or to come to USIS because of, the time you spend in the military it's worth the scholarship, and just purely on the experiences and on the work you're going to get to do. And yes, there are risks, and is it dangerous? Yes, but I think about it this way. When I ride on the Beltway here in DC, there's a risk that I could die in an automobile accident. And it's very similar to that same risk when you think about a physician serving. Yes, there are risks, but there are risks when you walk on an airplane. So that's my approach to it, and not everyone would agree with me on that, but that's how I've seen my career and enjoyed it that way.
Thank you. You mentioned a scholarship earlier. So somebody is asking, what are applicants' chances of getting accepted for that scholarship, and how competitive is it?
Right. No, that's a great question. And what I would say is if you get accepted to an allopathic or osteopathic medical school here in the United States, you will be very competitive for those scholarships. And so I think really the most competitive scholarships are for the Air Force. So, but if you have gotten into medical school, which is a great feat here in the United States to any medical school, you will be very competitive for these scholarships. If you apply for it, most likely you'll get it. And if you don't get it for that, like the 4-year scholarship, most definitely you will get the 3-year scholarship, because you'll be on the list, and they will actually, they'll put you on that list so that you could potentially get that 3-year scholarship. So, the hardest part is getting into medical school. And if you've been able to achieve that, you can certainly apply to these scholarships, and it is a very high likelihood you'll get one of the scholarships.
I think we have time for just a couple more questions, and we already have them in the Q&A. Some people are asking about family time. So do we get to see families, and how many times throughout the year? Do you move around a lot with your family? And then how much time do you spend with patients?
Yeah, no, great question. And so you will always be stationed with your family. So wherever you're stationed, you're going to be stationed in a secure place, and at a hospital or at a clinic. And so for example, when I graduated from residencies, there were 13 hospitals that needed radiologists, and I was told to rank those 13 hospitals 1 through 13 where I wanted to go. And so there were hospitals all through the United States, and the 3 overseas hospitals were in Japan. There was 1 in Naples, and there was 1 in Okinawa, which is also part of Japan, or an island near Japan. And so if wherever I got assigned, my family would go there with orders to go there for at least 3 years, and they would live with me. And so your family stays with you. The only time, and so I would see my family, or basically when I've traveled now, I've moved 9 times. When I've moved, my family's always been with me. And they're, I basically, they're with you when you're working in a hospital setting. When you get deployed, that's the different. That's when you do that 6 to 12 month deployment. That's if you go to a combat zone, that's when you would be separated from your family. So what I say is those deployments are the times when you're separated from your family. And you could anticipate, it may not happen, but if you have a 4-year scholarship, you may do 1 7th month deployment during that 4 years of payback. So that would be the time you're away from your family. The rest of that time you would be with your family during those 4 years. The question about patients is when you're seeing patients every day. Even if you're in a deployed status, you are, like I saw clinic, sick call every day, and then literally it would be like being on call at the hospital. If trauma came in, we would get called to the shock trauma platoon to actually take casualties when trauma came. So it would almost be no different than standing call in a civilian hospital or working as a physician. So you pretty much see patients, in your roles. Like, today I was working in radiology all day. So, it was no different than if I had been on a shift in radiology as a civilian radiologist. And the same goes for all our clinicians and our surgeons. They're doing the same things as well.
The very last question is, do you have to have a bachelor's degree before you go to USU?
Yes, you do. So the requirements are just like the same requirements for most medical schools. And we can actually, if you even Google USUHS admissions, we'll have all the requirements. So you need to have a bachelor's. The only, if you have a doctorate though, and so some people don't have a bachelor's that may have a doctorate in pharmacy or a PharmD, you can apply. So if that was the question, if you didn't have a bachelor's but you have a PharmD, if you have a doctorate level degree like that, yes, you can apply. And we just got actually authorization from Congress to actually do that this year. In years past, my answer would have been no, but we knew that was a problem and we wanted to fix that. And so that got approved this year, so that you can apply that way. But everyone else, yes, has to have a bachelor's. And then you have to meet our prerequisites with organic, physics, chemistry, humanities, and English, and the psychosocial sciences, all the requirements, almost just like every other medical school.
All right, that was our last question for today. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciated it. And, I'm not sure if I can put anything in there or even share with you all just my email, but you're more than welcome to reach out to me anytime when it comes to asking questions about that or even getting more information.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Liotta, for for just being willing to take questions from our student attendees. We are going to transition, and at 4:45 we have concurrent sessions beginning, and that's about 11 minutes away. So we're going to say farewell. Thank you so much to Dr. Liotta, and get back to your important patients out there. And thanks for your time. I know it's late out there on the East Coast, but we just really just thank you for your time and all of your knowledge that you've shared with us today.
Well, thank you all as well, and I really appreciated this, and I do apologize for the delay, but thank you so much.
No problem, no problem. All right, so I am going to share my screen and put the agenda back up, and the concurrent sessions all have their own links. So what will be important is for each of you to take a look at the schedule online. I'm going to share my screen so you can see what that link is again. Okay, so we've got the sjvpremed.ucsf.edu link up. That's the link you'll want to click on. That will then take you to the conference program. The concurrent links, Zoom links, are hyperlinked there, or you can access your PDF program if you have that up on your screen as well. Either way, those will take you to the Zoom links, and so we will no longer be using this link for the remainder of today. We will use this link starting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock though. Okay, so this is the webinar link, but the concurrent session links are you'll find on the conference program. All right, so I will see, so just take a look. You'll see you've got a couple of options, and we will see you. We will see you at 4:45. Thank you, everybody.